So now this is something I don't get to see every day.
No, it isn't, and especially not something that you usually get to climb into either. Although, in fairness, at Tankfest, they did actually let the public get into the Challenger 2 there.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I just said, it is the Challenger 2. It is the current main battle tank of the British Army, and it is a beast. It is, it's a great tank with its limitations, but they're working on it. There's an improvement program going on, but this just looks awesome. This is, if I was a 13-year-old boy drawing a tank, it would look something like this. It really would.
Yeah.
It's 70-something tons of imposing British steel. And with the new suspension, I am so jealous of how the British system works. So you know the way I always rabbit on about tensioning track and how it takes forever on any particular vehicle. The driver has a button. Well, actually, it's a lever, I think, but it's an automatic system. You're going, why can't we do that? I don't know. But this is an early version. You've got the Commander's Independent Viewer up there. Wasn't on the production vehicles initially, although it did show up in the export models and eventually would show up later. Thermal imager is on top of the gun tube, which I have questions about because, if you're shooting at a target way down there, the gun is now in between the sight and the tube. But I think we should go in.
Let's check it out.
I want to go in.
Let's go inside. This is cool.
Yep, we are now inside Challenger 2. Although admittedly you're missing the gunner's primary sight system, but your controls are still there. And I've always found those to be incredibly unique controls. Looking impression of them, how would you use it?
This looks like it. There's two handles here, but it's very stationary.
They don't move at all.
No.
So keep looking.
All right, we have something here.
No. You have that. Remember, you're going to be operating this, holding on to the control handles.
Right.
Does it remind you of anything? Maybe this kind of control handle.
Kind of the M60 a little bit.
Does it also remind you a little bit maybe of a PlayStation control handle?
That too.
How do you operate a PlayStation?
Well, with the buttons.
And what's the joystick?
Well, we have normally there's like a D-pad and then you have an analog stick. So.
Yep. So under your right thumb there, just left a little bit.
This one?
That should be. Is it there?
Yeah. It's like a D-pad.
Yeah, it's basically how you operate your gun. So the control handles are absolutely fixed, which actually it's a brilliant idea because remember, your gun system is stabilized.
Right.
But are you stabilized?
Not necessarily.
No, so how do you stabilize this? How do you hold on to yourself and stop yourself from getting bashed everywhere?
Well, I can hold it on.
You're holding on to those.
Yeah.
And if those things are fixed, then you can use it for support, and you're not going to put in what are called false inputs by being and of course you also have the chest pad here that can come against your chest and you hold yourself on. So it looks it's a brilliant idea because of course kids today they're growing up, joining the army, they already know how to use PlayStations, and everything is just there done with your thumbs on this PlayStation-like controller. It's a genius idea. But you were in Centurion a little earlier, and you got a little bit more room.
Yeah, this is considerably less cramped.
A lot more comfortable. You're there for hours, and the sights are reasonably located for you. You got a thermal viewer up there, and a whole bunch of very easily labeled switches on your right. I'll bet you because it's so logical. I bet you can tell me what each and every one of those knobs does almost just by looking at it.
Yeah, everything's really well labeled. I'm not familiar with what an MRS is.
Oh, muzzle reference system. Oh. So that's the at the very end of the gun tube. You'll see a little bulge, and what that does is it's a system of telling the sight where the end of the gun tube is, compared to where the computer thinks it is. So after you fire a few rounds, the gun gets hotter, it expands, the vibrations affect, and sometimes your sight is actually off compared to the gun tube. So by using the muzzle reference system, it can counteract for that.
Gotcha.
So thermal imager, focus gains. Of course, this thing will see at night. Your selectors for what we have here is laser, first return, last return, and that is if there are obstructions for the laser, you can see you get the correct return back into it. But the most commonly used switches are the ones that are directly in front of you. So if you look at them, daylight or thermal imager. So if you're looking at the night sight, you want to look at the day sight, you just use your left thumb.
Wow.
If you want to zoom in, zoom out, you click that thing that says mag. Laser and LA would be for the laser rangefinder and the fire control system, which is actually very similar to that of the M1A2. Big toggle on for your right thumb, coax off main. Which gun are you going to shoot?
Right.
It's a chain gun for some reason on this, not sure why. And then you got a strange controller for the HESH round, as on the right, that add drop thing, which I don't truly understand. I'm sure somebody who's actually a Challenger 2 gunner can probably tell you. But, this is just ergonomics as it goes on. As things get more and better designed, people think, how do you use these? And as you can see, this is awesome.
It's literally at your fingertips.
Everything. It's the pilots call it hand on throttle and stick. I don't know what the tank equivalent is, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
They think about this, and it gets better and better and better.
What are some of the main things that we learned from the Challenger 1 that were implemented here into the Challenger 2?
Do everything better. So you have there's a new gun, the L30 instead of the L11, which was a holdover from the Chieftain. But it uses the same 3-piece ammunition. So you got the projectile, which will be stowed behind me. You've got the bag charges, which are stowed below the turret ring, because that's safer. And then you got it's called a vent tube, which looks a bit like a 50 caliber shell casing. And you fling those three in. It's actually pretty fast. If you watch a competent operator, they call him here, loading the L30, it is actually a very fast process. The stabilization system is improved. The fire control system, so the IFCS was what Chieftain used, and very similar to what Challenger 1 used. This is now an Abrams type fire control system, very accurate, I believe, done by the Canadians. I'm not quite sure quite how it works out, but it's one of those Canadian companies that submitted the bid and won. Yay.
Something super distinct is not how you mentioned in previous videos. The ammunition is not stored out in the open. We have these bins.
Yeah, the bag charges are in the
Only
bins.
there 'cause
but up high, like a saber round, there's nothing explosive in a saber round.
Right,
it's
just
just a big piece of metal.
Yeah.
So there's no problem with that being up in a bustle, completely exposed.
How many can fit up in here?
I honestly have no idea, but I'm going to assume about 20 or 25. So I guess I have some idea. But again, if those things, if it gets hit and things go flying around, you're probably not alive anyway because of the amount of force that it takes to get a saber projectile to move around like that if it's strapped in. And there's a couple of rounds under the gun tube there as well, you can see.
That's it.
The coax, for some reason they went with a chain gun. I'm not sure. I've never actually played with their coaxial machine gun. So
What's the difference?
Most machine guns are operated by gas. Basically, the gas either uses a recoil force, or the gas goes forward into a piston, into a gas tube, uses a piston, and cycles the bolt that way. The chain gun is electric. So there is actually a little chain. It looks like a small bicycle chain that goes around 4 cogs in an orbit, and each time it does an orbit, the gun cycles once. So if the index tab, or I can't remember the exact name of it, is up at the front left. Let's say it's in the breech lock ready to fire position. As it goes right, it triggers it, comes back, it starts the extraction cycle, comes left, you feed the round, comes forward, and it locks the bolt. And this electric-driven motor is what actually operates the gun. I'm not sure I see the advantage to it over a regular machine gun, but obviously somebody does who gets paid a lot more than I do to understand these things.
Yeah.
But it's a nice privilege to be inside a Challenger 2. Yeah. And of course you got big, thick armor. Again, you see how big the turret is on the outside.
Yeah, the thing's massive.
The thing's absolutely massive, but you can see on the inside how much metal there is between where you are. And it's not just metal, it's plastics and space and all sorts of other things that we're not allowed to talk about or know. Right. And I don't know, honestly, because, again, I don't need to. But this is considered to be one of the safest tanks to get hit in, of any. Merkava is up there, and the Swedes have an argument for the STRV 122. But if you're going to take a hit, you do very well to take a hit in this thing.
It has a record to prove it.
It does. There's like 70 something. Well, no. There's 13 RPG hits, I think, in one particular tank.
Good lord.
Just look, he shot at me. Haha. Bad move.
This thing's formidable as formidable as anything on the battlefield.
Yeah, and especially given that there's not actually all that many of these things left. I think they just announced going down to two regiments. The British train hard, and as I've always said, what's really important in a modern tank is how good the crew is. And the British trained their tankers well. Let's see. Anything else to be said around here? I've already mentioned the driver's position because he's got the awesome tack tension system. This is a lovely little well-designed. I wouldn't mind going to war in this. I like my Abrams. I think I probably still prefer my Abrams because I'm used to it, but I would not mind going to war in this tank.
It was incredibly cool to see it in motion at Tankfest in the arena.
Oh, and it's fast.
It's so fast, and the turret moves so fast. Like, you see that thing swing around, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's straight on, and again, because you got the commander's designate function on after the upgrades, and it's stabilized. So as the thing's going around, I don't know if you noticed, the gunner would occasionally pick a guy in the crowd, and he'd track that guy for a second or two before moving on, and the gun tube is just dead still as it's doing this.
Just like super smooth, and the thing's going, it's turning, the turret's staying, it's super smooth.
Oh, that driver was having the time of his life. I mean, you saw the tank coming around, skidding around corner. I mean, this guy's tail sliding, the Challenger 2. But again, it weighs 70 tons, so there is going to be inertia for when you stop and when you go around the corner.
But for 70 tons, it sure looks nimble in motion.
It does. And again, modern technology compared to those early tanks that were going around like the Matilda, there's your clank, 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 and what they're doing now, it's night and day. You can imagine if you were a World War I tanker, and you came out and you saw one of these things going around, that would be a significant emotional event almost.
It was crazy to see. I think it was a Tankfest maybe 2 or 3 years ago when they had their replica of the first one.
Of the Mark IV.
That's right. And then next to the challenge, it's
and the Mark IV is just see this band of tracks. It look very Fletcher called it very spooky looking.
Yeah.
And it, especially you don't know what a tank was supposed to be to begin with. That would be a good reason. But and it's only been 100 years.
That's right.
Since tanks were developed, and it's. Actually, something I noticed the other day is that those beautiful cars from the 1930s, like the Duesenbergs, the gorgeous looking designs, and then you go to the muscle cars like the Chargers and so on. Those two vehicles are a lot closer to each other than the muscle cars are to what we're driving today in terms of years, and probably technology as well. And it's just the speed of advance is amazing. But that is a bit of a digression.
That's right.
Yeah, talking about classic cars when we're sitting in a Challenger 2. You're sitting in a Challenger 2 when you're talking about classic cars.
Nothing wrong with a good old ramble, but it's amazing to see. It's quite a privilege for myself to be able to sit in one of these things. It's an impressive machine.
What if we can get him to let us drive it?
Oh, I would hope. Maybe
Are you sure we can't start this up?
We take it for a spin?
It's fully working. You could drive it. However, it would set all the smoke alarms off.
Oh.
Worth it.
We get into trouble.
Yeah, but we'll be in a tank.
Yeah.
How much trouble can we get into?
To get in trouble, they'd have to get into the tank. To get us proper in trouble.
Granted, we would have to run out of gas eventually. You're not my father.
You're not my real dad. This is cool. It's interesting.
I want one now.
Yeah, I want one. Santa Claus can take note, but something that, I don't know, being able to be inside one of these things and sort of see the function just brings up just how one can relate to and understand this, and just brings up my level of respect and interest in the crews and these who serve.
Yeah, because when you're playing World of Tanks, you don't see it. All you see is the outside of the tank, right? Tank just around, and it's lots of fun, but yeah, as you're saying, once you're inside, then you get to see, well, this is what is actually happening inside the tank.
What better way to connect than to see it and experience some perspective for yourself?
Yeah.
And this tank is way too young for World of Tanks at this time, but it retains some of the features that we know from some of the earlier tanks that we've been in.
Well, I mean, you got your manual handles so if something goes wrong, if you go down to steam gunnery, you've lost all your electrics, you can still operate this with basic World War II technology. You got your elevation handle there, which I don't know. Will it crank? Does it have hydraulics to crank? No. Actually, crank it around.
You have to crank it around.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, there it goes.
You can raise and lower it. And you can probably find the traverse off to your right there.
Where are we at? Oh, here it is.
There it is.
Yeah, hidden a little bit.
Yeah. What a traverse? Or is the turret lock on? There is probably a turret lock somewhere
Nope.
around here. All right, so the turret lock must be on. No, there you go.
It's
Yeah,
cool.
you're spinning it.
Let's go.
So between that and the auxiliary site in front of you there, a World War II tanker can probably engage tank.
A tinker from some past generations might just have to be familiar maybe with some of the terms to fully be able to make use of it, but get right in the seat, and like you mentioned, he'd know exactly what controls are what and be able to roll with that.
You can always operate a tank on the most basic level by use of the mechanical controls. They haven't changed. The principles of tanking haven't changed. Just the technology has made it faster and further away and more lethal.
More efficient. Deadlier, but also safer for the crews inside.
There's a big red button here. I am debating pushing the big red button.
It's always, it's like, they say not to, but there's something...
There's something that just draws you to pushing the red button.
There's innate appeal.
Yeah, you should push the red button. I think I'll push the red
Don't
button.
push the button. Don't do it! Do it.